Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Hans Meeder with the National Center for College and Career Transitions. I'd like to welcome you today to the webinar, Building Apprenticeship with CTE in Pennsylvania. In today's webinar, we'll have the presenters, myself, President of NC3T, Brett Pawlowski, who is our Education Employer Engagement Expert, the Executive Vice President of NC3T. You can find out more about our professional biographies at our website with NC3T. And then we also have a special guest presenter, Ann Fairall, who is the co-op coordinator with Western Area Career Technology Center. And I'll introduce Leanne again in a few minutes. Before we move forward, just wanted to check, are you able to see my screen and hear me okay? Okay, I'm not hearing any problems with that, so from our team, so thank you. I'll restart here. A little bit about the National Center for College and Career Transitions. This is our vision statement: every learner with a dream and a plan, and every community with a capable and ready workforce. And we support a quality career-connected learning, which includes career technical education programs, pathways, systems development, education, employer engagement, with expert coaching and technical assistance. And this project, which we are really honored to be carrying out with support from the Pennsylvania Department of Education's Bureau of Career and Technical Education. The purpose of this project is to develop a practical written resource that supports career technology centers in developing or expanding registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs that are closely aligned to registered apprenticeships. And over the last several months, we've been documenting practices of career technology centers that are already involved with apprenticeships. We are coordinating this work with the Bureau of Career Technical Education and the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industries Apprenticeship Office. And then we are also inviting career technology center leaders to join an apprenticeship working group, which we are launching today. So I'll give a very quick overview, kind of an apprenticeship 101 for people that maybe aren't really familiar with how apprenticeships works. There are 5 recognized components of a registered apprenticeship program. And by registered, we mean that the program has been developed and approved by either the U.S. Department of Labor or by a state's Department of Labor and Workforce, in this case, the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. I'm drawing from information that the U.S. Department of Labor offers through a quick start toolkit, which you'll see referenced during this presentation. And in the follow-up information to all the participants, we'll send you a link so you can access that toolkit. But there are 5 key elements to any registered apprenticeship program, and any solid apprenticeship program is going to have these elements. The very strong business involvement, where either one business or several businesses banding together are working to offer the apprenticeship opportunity. And you see that through the commitment that the employer makes to providing structured on-the-job training to the apprentice from an experienced mentor. And the apprenticeship can last from anywhere from 1 year to somewhere 5 years is a typical range. In addition to the on-the-job structured training that the apprentice is receiving, they are also participating in regularly scheduled instruction, usually in a career technical center or community college, an apprenticeship training center. Sometimes other organizations provide that training. Sometimes it's even provided on site at the place of employment, but that's called related instruction. And then another really important distinguishing factor of an apprenticeship program is that the apprentice is hired as an employee, and that there are built-in incremental wage increases that parallel the increase in the skills and knowledge of that apprentice. So as they go through the apprenticeship and they're gaining additional skills and knowledge, then they will from time to time see a bump in their earnings. And that really is a reflection of the concept that the apprentice is becoming of greater and greater value to the employer until they reach to that full level of mastery. And then finally, through the registered apprenticeship program, the apprentice will be earning a nationally recognized occupational credential that is transportable and really validates the level of skill and knowledge that they have attained. The other thing we wanted, another resource to draw your attention to, and this really relates to the idea of how to recruit your business and industry partners into an apprenticeship, is this research that was done by Case Western Reserve University in partnership with the U.S. Department of Commerce in 2016. There's 21, I believe, case studies in this report, and they really looked at the issue, can we document return on investment for the money that an employer has to put into hiring apprentices and paying costs associated with the on-the-job structured training. And they found very clearly that you can make a very a strong return on investment case to employers, that there's a good 40 to 50% return on investment, and it's realized in pretty short order. For instance, in the New Hampshire healthcare system, they hired additional medical assistants through their apprenticeship program, and therefore they were able to serve more patients. Which increased their income, and they saw a quick return on their investment over a course of 2 years. Similarly, Siemens Manufacturing, one of their manufacturing plants, created an apprenticeship program, and their apprentices were actually able to do additional tasks that their other on-the-job trainees weren't really up to, things like maintenance and repairs, so they were able to bring in a new line of business and income flow. So it's really important that we help employers realize that this is going to be a good return on their investment. The other piece which is documented in this study is that retention of employees and loyalty of employees is stronger through apprenticeship programs than through other hiring mechanisms. So particularly when there's a skill shortage and it's difficult to fill jobs, and skilled workers are getting poached from one company to another company, the apprenticeship approach builds stronger employee loyalty and connection to your company. So with that, let me turn it over to Brad. He can talk about some other work-based learning options related to apprenticeship.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hans. And good afternoon, everyone. This is Brett Pawlowski with NC3T. As Hans mentioned previously, I'm the industry engagement. I mean, that's sort of my practice area here at NC3T. So this has been a really interesting project to sort of dive into the details and really become sort of immersed in what's happening with apprenticeships. We are going to be talking specifically about career preparation options. I mean, when you talk about employer engagement, there's a whole spectrum going from career awareness activities to exploration to preparation, and these are specifically career preparation activities that we're talking about here. Some of the information that we have comes from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. For those of you who have not seen this handbook, it's available on the PDE website. It's a wonderful resource, a lot of very state-specific information in there. So I would encourage you to find that on the PDE site. Next slide. What we'll just highlight today as options or sort of alternatives for apprenticeships are the ones listed here. The first being the informal apprenticeship program, which is essentially, it's an apprenticeship model. It is not formally registered. It is not generally run through some sort of an institution. You tend to see this still in the skilled trades today. You see this among artists. You see this even some in agriculture with people who are taking over a farm from an existing farmer. And you see this a lot more in other countries where they may not have the institutional structure to manage a formal apprenticeship model. In terms of cooperative education, it's a fairly common model. It does have some parallels to apprenticeships in the sense that young people are involved in long-term learning activities that is progressive. It does focus on preparing students for an occupation in a certain industry. It's also distinct from apprenticeships in the sense that apprenticeships usually involve hiring the student as a full-time employee, whereas co-op students are not hired as employees generally. With an apprenticeship, the apprenticeship sponsor, which is usually the employer, but not always, but the apprenticeship sponsor controls the process. It determines what is going to be taught and how, whereas the final responsibility for a co-op rests with the educational institution. And the third key difference is that apprenticeships are paid positions and generally pay increases as skills are developed, whereas co-op students may or may not be paid, and they may or may not be seeing some sort of increased compensation over time. The boot camp model, this is growing in prominence, and you even see it in some organizations in Pennsylvania. There's a group called Year Up that has an office in Philadelphia, but it's a model that focuses primarily on classroom instruction, where students are sort of put into an immersive experience, learning about careers, learning about occupations, learning about employability skills, things like that, and then that is sort of extended into a work experience, generally more like an internship, maybe a semester long or less, rather than a multi-year apprenticeship model. But there is an intensive instructional period followed by a work experience. In terms of employability skills training, employability skills are always one of the top needs of employers, and so this model has a certain amount of appeal. It is generally a school-based initiative. It is driven by a curriculum. It's done primarily in a classroom environment. There's instruction, there is practice with skills, there is individual student counseling, and generally some employer experiences, but nothing as immersive as an internship or an apprenticeship. Usually it's mock interviews, site visits, job shadows, generally nothing more intensive than that. And finally, in terms of internships and externships, internships tend to last a semester or less. They are structured experiences. They happen at a workplace. They do have job responsibilities, but generally you do want a student to get experience sort of around the table. So the student will move from position to position to learn a lot about the different roles within a company or within an industry. So it is not as immersive as an apprenticeship. And an externship is essentially sort of a mini internship model. It generally lasts from 1 day to 2 weeks. And there is still some work involved, but even fewer responsibilities than with an internship. And these are generally unpaid in either case. Okay, Hans, you can switch the slide. And one more. Thank you. Traditionally, at least in the general public, people tend to think about apprenticeships as being in the skilled trades, sometimes in manufacturing. But the Department of Labor has found that there are literally hundreds, almost 1,000 occupations that they recognize in multiple industries that are apprenticeable positions. You can find a lot of information on the Department of Labor site. We'll just touch on a few. I mean, advanced manufacturing is a perennial favorite, where you see CNC programming, machining, industrial maintenance and repair, die casting, plastic molding, things like that. Construction and skilled trades are certainly a sweet spot for the apprenticeship model, whether it's construction trades, electrician roles, carpentry, pipe fitting, things like that, plumbing, of course. Energy, you see a lot of those skilled positions as well, such as electrician roles, gas utility workers, working in a refinery, some of the various operator roles. Finance and business is sort of a newer model, but there are certain positions there that require a long sort of preparation to work with clients and understand the nuance in terms of insurance adjusting, working as a bank teller, managing and overseeing credit issues, things like that. Healthcare, you're seeing more and more apprenticeships in areas like EMTs, various hospital technician roles, like sanitary technicians, pharmacy assistants, nursing aides, and roles like that. Hospitality was actually a surprise to me, but you see, particularly in higher end skills like baking and cooking and even housekeeping, you find apprenticeship opportunities sometimes. IT is a lot of the technical skills around computer programming, equipment operation, design and development of systems, telecommunications, a lot like IT, rolling out lines such as fiber optic technicians, telecommunications, antenna design and implementation. And finally, with transportation, you see mechanics, ship fitters, truck drivers, diesel mechanics, and roles like that. So even though a lot of us think about apprenticeships in terms of manufacturing and construction, the reality is the opportunities are really widespread across many occupations and many industries. That's it for me, Hans.
Very good. Thank you, Brett. So now it's my privilege to ask Ann Fairall, who is the Cooperative Education Coordinator at the Western Area Career Technology Center, that, as you can imagine, the far southwest corner of the state Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Leanne has a really extensive experience in career technical education, cooperative education, so we're delighted to have her here and to learn about what they're doing with a regional apprenticeship program. So let me turn it over to you now, Leanne.
Thank you, Hans. Hi, everybody. It is Ann Fairall, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today. So I coordinate the Cooperative Education Program, and as part of the program, there are many aspects to it, so I thought I would just run quickly through those for you. First of all, and probably the most extensive, is the Work Co-op program. And when I took over the Work Co-op program 3 years ago, the first year it had 19 students out by the end of the year. Last year I ended the year with 26, and this year it has doubled in size. So it has been keeping me very busy. It's taken a lot of work to really gain the trust of area employers and to network and get them on board, and we have some awesome employment opportunities for the students. We also have internships that are unpaid for students that are in certain programs that it's difficult to find a paid position for, and they can work up to 120 hours during the course, and that of course is unpaid. Apprenticeships, that's new this year, and I will come back to that because that's really what the focus is and the reason I'm here talking with you today. But we also have job shadowing. I also set up clinical experiences for our health assistance class, as well as our emergency and protective services program. I also set up industry tours, and I just had a wonderful 2-day career fair for our students last week, and that was very successful. So on to the apprenticeship program. This has been my first year of working with an apprenticeship program, and I was approached by Rachel Maurer of the German American Chamber of Commerce of Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh chapter. And basically she has constructed this model. It's based on the German model. It's a dual apprentice system, and it's a 3-year program. And so Rachel has made many contacts with companies, German companies around the area, and they have agreed to participate in this apprenticeship program. And just as Hans and
Brett,
thank you, spoke about regarding, I apologize, Brett, for the apprentice system, that there is an educational training component combined with a work experience. And so how it initially starts is that Rachel selects high schools to introduce the programs too, and to invite students to attend a field trip to these German companies, where the representative at the German company takes you around the company and explains all about the work and all about the apprenticeship program. To my knowledge, they're all 3-year programs, and they begin in the senior year while the student is still in high school. And so Rachel and I had to learn how to work together this year, and we are still learning how to work together and combine all the requirements that she has, because her program is a registered apprenticeship program, while I have to meet the state requirements for a cooperative education program. And so it's kind of been a learning experience on both of our parts, but it's been working out very, very well. I have 2 students that are working at a company in McMurray, Pennsylvania. It's called Hinneke, and it is a really awesome German company. And the students are working there 2 days a week. They work Tuesdays and Thursdays at the current time, and they receive the instruction from their instructor here at the Career Center. So the instruction and education that they would receive by an outside agency for students that are in the program from a public school, the instructor of their shop program here at the Career and Tech Center delivers that instruction to these students. And so the paperwork and the documentation that I have to have for the students in the work co-op program, I share with Rachel, because she has to have documentation for the requirements of the apprenticeship program. So we've learned to work together really well, and it's been very successful. My understanding is that once these students graduate in June, that they will have 2 years to continue on in the apprenticeship program at the company. And at the end of the 3rd year, they will be brought on as a permanent full-time employee. And so it is a program that is to definitely bring students in and have them work with a company until they finish the apprenticeship program that leads to permanent employment. And so the students are developing very relative and competitive skill sets. And I think in a way, because one of the differences when I place a student on work co-op is that you want them to get a variety of training and work experience at a company, but you always cannot make sure that is happening, or if it's happening to the extent that you would like it to happen. And the one thing that I think is really great about this apprenticeship partnership with the German companies and with the German American Chamber is that it is a more, it's set up to where the students are actually being moved around the company, getting a lot of different experiences in the company, so that they can actually understand how the company works in every aspect, and how their piece of the pie, if you will, fits into the whole thing. And I think that's a really nice advantage.
Leanne, if you wouldn't mind me just interjecting for a moment. We are about to take a short break for questions. So if you would like to enter a question, you can go to the question box on their navigation bar and enter a question, and then I will facilitate those questions when Leanne finishes her remarks.
Next slide.
All right.
So, as I said, Rachel and I are learning to work together, and just to go over just a few of the differences between her working with a career and tech center versus working with public high school. And so one of the great advantages to Rachel being able to access career and tech centers for the positions at German companies, probably the most evident benefit is that the students at the Career and Tech Center from the specific shop that they are studying in have had at least 2 years of training and education in that field or in that area. So right out of the box, when they start working at the company, they're a little bit ahead of the game, if you will, than a student that's coming from a public high school that has no specific training in that area. So I will use our mechatronics program as the example, and them being at Hinneka, they come in with a certain skill set from the training they've received in that shop class. Whereas if you take a student from a public school and put them in that position, they're going to naturally need a lot more attention and a lot more training and a lot more individual, or an individual working a lot more in depth with them than it does students coming from a career and tech center. So there's definitely a great advantage to working with a CTC. What we've learned to coordinate between the two of us is that because this is a work co-op program, the state regulates that there has to be somebody that is a liaison between the Career and Tech Center, the employer, which is what I do. And so I oversee their work experience. Clearances are required by their supervisor at the place of employment, and the place of employment has to agree to allow me to come in and to evaluate the student's work performance, a number of times throughout the school year. And of course, complete required paperwork that's required by the state. So again, the curriculum is taught by our CTC instructor, whereas in a high school, it's delivered by an outside organization. Next slide. So as you can imagine, I think everybody knows that when seniors are getting ready to graduate high school, particularly from a CTC, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the phone calls and the emails have started flooding into me, because area employers know that the seniors are getting ready to graduate, and they want to snatch them up as quickly as possible because of the training that they do receive here. And so there's a lot of competition going on out there for students, especially from CTCs, because many of the trades are clamoring for employees. And so you have area employers that are competing for them. Of course, you have post-secondary education and training schools that are competing for them, and the military, as well as apprenticeship programs and union training programs, all competing for the high school graduates. So next slide, please. When I was talking to Hans a few weeks ago and we were touching base about how things were going, one of the things I said is, I really see this being the wave of the future, particularly for businesses that are in the trades that are having a difficult time finding skilled employees, dedicated, loyal employees, people that will show up on time. They really are, some of the area employers are really hurting for employees. And I really see that, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion because I'm learning a lot today by being a part of this. So by no means am I an expert, but my thought is, I think that apprenticeship programs, unions, training programs, employers, I think that they all need to start becoming more creative in their thought and more open-minded. One of the things that really bothers me is when I hear an employer that needs employees, but their handbook says somebody has to be 18 and a high school graduate. Well, I think that everybody needs to start thinking more openly and creatively, and apprenticeship programs, I think, is a great way to really snag the seniors before other competitors can grab them when they graduate. And I was telling Hans that, we have a lot of unions and training programs that come in here and try to recruit the students, but many of the students, the majority of the students in the work co-op program, when they graduate, they are already offered full-time permanent employment. They do receive raises and they do receive full benefit packages. So at that point in time, it's really hard to convince a high school graduate that, you need to leave your employer where you have all of this, being offered to you, and you have, 6 months to 9 months experience there. to quit and go into apprenticeship program or a union's training program. And so my hope is that more apprenticeship programs start being more creative and recruiting seniors and allowing them to start working in their places of employment during their senior year, that naturally transitions on into the last year or two of the apprenticeship program instead of having to wait to start it when they graduate. So basically, that's my experience. Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leanne. We do have a couple questions, and one of them is the question about whether this presentation will be taped for viewing later. And yes, we are recording it. We may edit it a little bit, and then we'll have it available. We'll be sending out some after the webinar information to everyone who's on the webinar right now, and then we'll give you access to the recording. One question we received was, is the German American Chamber model what some folks, such as the Hanover Chamber of Commerce, are calling pre-apprenticeships? And we have spoken, NC3T has spoken to the people at the Hanover Chamber, and their program is a pre-apprenticeship model where they've got, it's not exactly the same as what is happening in Western area CTC, which is a full apprenticeship that high school students are a part of. The Hanover County Chamber of Commerce, their model is for their high school students. They are in a pre-apprenticeship, and then they will be developing a full apprenticeship that once those students have graduated from high school, then they will be entering the full apprenticeship. So it is a slightly different model. The German American Chamber model, from what Leanne just told us, these students are actually in the apprenticeship program as high school seniors. Do I have that right, Leanne?
Sorry, I had muted myself. I apologize. Yes, you do have that right.
Okay, great.
You are correct.
And here's a question for you, Leanne. Do you run into any issues if students are 16 or 17 years old and want to do the German apprenticeship?
At this point, students aren't eligible until, I believe, for the work co-op program toward the end of their junior year. And to my knowledge, I think that it begins in their senior year, and I have not had any students, the sophomores that have approached me. I have had a couple of juniors that are in the same program that the other two students that are participating that have asked about how can they get involved in this next year.
My understanding, the German American model is that they are recruiting students in the latter part of their junior year. During the summer after their junior year, they're getting some on-site experience, and then they're officially entering during their senior year?
Correct. That's my understanding.
Okay, great. All right. Well, very good. We'll just have a few more minutes here. That's all the questions we have for now. If there's any other further questions, we'll try to address them at the end of the webinar. If we're not able to, we'll add some answers in our follow-up communication with you. So very quickly, Brett, if you could take about 5 minutes and talk about how to encourage employers to host apprenticeships.
Absolutely. If you just want to bump to the next slide, that would be great. Whenever you're talking about industry engagement, I think it's important because these do take effort and time and resources to pull together. Whenever you're thinking about working with industry, I think it's important to focus on the benefits that all the parties around the table receive. And in terms of what employers get from apprenticeships, they are able to connect early with prospective employees, as Leanne had mentioned. It is an opportunity for a low-risk evaluation of prospective employees. You get a better quality of employees because you've got control over the training process. There is a financial return on investment, as Hans mentioned with the Case Western study, and it's also an opportunity to build a more diverse workforce. If you're putting a focus on diversity and you're having trouble attracting the type of employees that you're looking for, this is an opportunity to bring somebody along. Your students or apprentices get a lot of benefits ranging from the inside track to the good job to the national apprenticeship credential, and even your program receives a lot of benefits for all of the effort that you put in in terms of making sure that you are serving local employers. It's a great opportunity to test the relevance of your program and allow you to go back and get that real world feedback to fine tune it. It does improve student outcomes, obviously, and it also provides a window to attracting additional partners when you offer additional support like apprenticeships. Next slide, Hans. So the most common question that we hear is, how do I get companies to take apprentices? And I would suggest that is actually not the right question, because that is a student-centered approach. And when you think about apprenticeships in particular, it is an employer-led model. It requires a major investment on their part. They're hiring someone on a full-time basis. It's a multi-year commitment. You need to take an employer orientation. And so rather than ask, how do I get companies to take apprentices, you might think about asking, what skilled positions are employers so desperate for that they'll make this investment? And I think that sort of reorients your whole strategy in finding and engaging partners, because if you go out to get the answer to that question, you've got to go out and have those conversations with employer partners. Once you have those conversations, whether it's with the employers or the representatives, the sector groups, and that sort of thing, as you get the information, you're also finding the people who have the need. And so right there, you've already gone through the work of identifying your prospective partners. You're focusing on what it is that they need, and that's what's going to bring them to the table. It's sort of a demand-driven strategy that we've seen time and again. So that is the approach that I would take in finding employers. When you sit down to talk to them about the opportunity, you already know that they have the need, or else you wouldn't be having the conversation. You wouldn't be focused on the apprenticeships. You want to maximize the value. We talked about just briefly the benefits to the employers in terms of a low-risk opportunity to bring in people in a high-need area. Do whatever you can to minimize the risk. See what you can do in terms of offering support, working with them to develop the model, the learning standards, the application for the registered apprenticeships. See if there are funds available, and I know that there are funds both at the state level and federally, and do whatever you can to support the development and the ongoing maintenance of the program. That will help to minimize the risk and help to minimize the lift that they have to take on. And I think that that's going to make it more likely. And if you're speaking to their needs, that is about the best you can do in engaging employers in this model. And so with that, Hans, I'll turn it back over to you.
Very good. There was an additional question that I may have missed earlier, and Leanne, if you could be prepared to answer this if you know the answer. Is there a minimum number of hours requirement for your students in the senior year? And I'm assuming that's talking about the minimum number of hours in the co-op program.
For the co-op program, there is no minimum number of hours. For instance, I am still placing students on jobs now. So there is no minimum hours. They can work Monday through Thursday, and during the time that they are regularly here at the Career Center, and they can actually work after school and weekends as well. But there is no minimum, and there is, the only maximum would be of course, meeting the state laws.
Right. Okay, good. And then for the SIP code, is there a SIP code specifically that you use for this program?
For the co-op program or for the German apprenticeship program?
Well, it's kind of, I'm not sure I completely understand it, but I'd say for the co-op program, perhaps.
Okay. The SIP code that is used is not related to the work co-op program. The SIP code that's used is program specific. So for instance, welding has their own SIP code, machinists do, the machine shop does. And so the SIP code that I utilize comes directly from those programs and the competencies that they are required to teach during the 3 years that the students are in the program.
Okay, great. All right, very good. We will just quickly wrap up here. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but there is this excellent guide called the Quick Start Toolkit from the U.S. Department of Labor that talks about the essentials of building a registered apprenticeship program. And they're pretty common sense, but it's really helpful to think about this as you're exploring the apprenticeship opportunity, particularly reaching out to employers that are needing to do that, identifying the partners in your region. You may have chambers of commerce. We obviously have heard about the Hanover Regional Chamber of Commerce. We've got the German American Chamber of Commerce in Western Pennsylvania, the Career Technical Center, employer organizations, large employers that may be involved in that. So the partnering is the third. Building is where you get into the nuts and bolts of really building out all the components of your program. We saw the model a few minutes ago, about these 5 components of your registered apprenticeship. Once you've done that, and I've heard really good things about the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and industry in terms of being a good partner to work with, to make sure that you have all the components in place and giving technical assistance to you as you're registering your program. And then launching your program, welcoming your students, getting your students involved. There are some resources that are available through the state right now. The Department of Community and Economic Development has an open kind of rolling admissions for applying for funding to help start up pre-apprentice programs and apprenticeship programs. So you can check this out with the information that we send to you. And we, as I said at the beginning of the webcast, we are forming an apprenticeship working group. So today is the kickoff of that. We have a large number of people on today's webinar, but there may be other people that would like to get more ongoing information. In April, in May, and June of this program year, we will be having 3 additional monthly web meetings to share experiences and tips. We'll have some other schools that are working in apprenticeship to talk about how they're doing it. We know that there's a variety of approaches on how that is working. The case we heard about today, just to be clear, is where the German American Chamber is the sponsoring organization. They have some other partners that also provide related instruction, and then the Western Area Career Tech Center is really kind of coordinating that co-op experience for their apprenticeship students. So there's a lot of different flavors and varieties of how this can be done. I will be focusing on different approaches in each of our upcoming meetings. We will also then be sharing, when it's approved, the BCTE apprenticeship guide for career technical education. So that will have some of these general concepts and explanations, but specifically in the context of how career technical programs and career technology centers can get involved with apprenticeship in a variety of ways. So we'll be sending you some information after this webinar. We'd like to invite you to join this working group, and then we'll send you follow-up information on those upcoming meetings. Also would like to make you aware of some resources that have been developed over the last number of years through the Bureau of Career Technical Education's Technical Assistance Program, and projects that NC3T has done on behalf of the Bureau, researching different promising practices and best practices around a variety of important topics that will help you be more successful in all of your career technical education endeavors, as well as apprenticeship. And then there's a great website that the Pennsylvania Association of Career Technical Administrators host, and we have done a lot of the research and writing for working with PACTA. It's called PACTEresources.com, and it's searchable by topic, so it's easy to read and easy to implement information there that you can utilize. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us today. We will just make sure we have all of your questions that we weren't able to get to because of time, and then we'll follow up with you. We'll also be sending you out some follow-up information. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we really hope everyone has a great afternoon, a great holiday weekend if you're celebrating Easter. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.